Hi everyone. My name is Jerry Wise, and today I would like to talk about what it might feel like if you grew up with a narcissistic parent. So many people ask me about how would I know if I grew up with a narcissistic parent? Many of you may be thinking, well, of course you'd know. They would act so narcissistic. Well, we need to remember that growing up in our families is very hypnotic, and there's quite a trance involved in growing up in our family of origin. And we don't think about all those categories of different diagnoses or different evaluations or personality disorders. When we grow up, we just know that as that's mom and that's dad, and that's how they behave, and that's what they do. And many of us, there are many who don't see their parent as narcissistic or even having narcissistic traits until they're in the 50s or 60s. And I know that may sound amazing, but it really happens quite frequently because they were saying, boy, I wish I would have known this when I was 25. So, what does it mean? How would you know? And what would it feel like today? This is not meant to diagnose your parents. This is not meant as a professional diagnosis of them or even a diagnosis of you. But I'd like to tell you some things that might trigger an investigation into that. And you might learn more and check out to see if you may have had a parent or two who might be narcissistic or have narcissistic traits. So what goes on with a narcissistic parent? Oftentimes with a narcissistic parent, they can be very smothering, very overwhelming, very demanding, if not even tyrannical. They can be controlling and critical. They can be dismissive or discarding of you. Love is conditional. It's not just given unconditionally. It's based on a transaction. Love is conditional. There may be love bombing that goes on. In other words, they love you, love you, love you so that you'll do this and do this and do that, and then they withdraw. They can be abusive emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and I think there's even lots of spiritual abuse that goes on. And so these are some of the things that happen with a narcissistic parent. Those are not all the things that happen, but those are some of the things. And as a result of those kinds of narcissistic traits, I want to talk about how I might feel if I grew up in that kind of family environment and what that might feel like to help you get a handle on maybe starting to investigate this for yourself. If you want to learn more, if you want to learn more in depth, I have an online program that's listed down below. There's also a free training listed down there that doesn't cost you anything. You can get on and get 84 minutes of some good training. Then there's an online program that I've been working on for 45 years to try to help you see life more clearly, see yourself more clearly, and also see your family more clearly. So, what are some of these, let's say, 11 or 12 traits that maybe this is how I might feel if I grew up with a narcissistic parent? Often you felt virtually powerless growing up. If we feel powerless growing up, probably we have a pretty controlling and very a lack of respect and freedom type of family. And so if we felt virtually powerless, that might be a clue. Another clue is your life has never felt like your own. It's everybody else's life. My life is not mine, it's everybody else's life. That also can be another trait or indication that maybe we should look into this as a possibility. You've never felt like there was room for your real self. There was never room for the real you. You always had to perform, or you had to be somebody you were supposed to be, but never could you just really be your real self, nor was that rewarded, nor was that encouraged. You feel voiceless, invisible, or unheard. If you feel voiceless, invisible, and unheard, then that might be an indication that maybe you had some dysfunction going on in your family, maybe in so much as having a parent who had narcissistic traits or full NPD disorder. You feel emotional often, but not aware of your feelings, or you might even feel numb. Just because people feel numb doesn't mean they can't be emotional. And just because we don't know our feelings doesn't mean we can't be emotional. And so when we have that dichotomy of being emotional but not being aware of feelings, and those are kind of pushed down, then there's a dysfunctional family component going on, and possibly even a narcissistic parent. You feel highly triggered easily and lots of anxiety, but have learned not to show it. Not to show your feelings, not to show your anxiety, not to show that you are triggered. You're like and forgive me for my New York viewers and fans, I love New York, but I think of the New Yorker who walks down the street and no matter what happens, they are just nonplussed. They just look at that and go on. I even had an experience of that even in a large city near me, Indianapolis, and I went there, and unfortunately there was a homeless man who was urinating in the eating area in the restaurant. And I went up and said, "Hey, I just wanted to tell you this man's having some trouble. Do you think somebody could go and help him or maybe clean up that mess?" And again, I think the man was either mentally ill or, and I felt bad for him. Nobody noticed. The girl asked me, "Do you want your fried chicken for here to go?" That was her response to my concern about this man over here. And so it's like they're just nonplussed. They just don't, see. We just learn not to care because it's just too painful or too difficult. Sorry for that crass example, but I know it was a surprise to me because I thought, nobody is even noticing this. It's like, does this happen every day? Is this a normal kind of occurrence? Maybe I am sheltered in my life. Additionally, you are loyal to people who don't feel obligated to be loyal to you. You feel obligated to people and to people who don't deserve it. If you're loyal and obligated to people who don't really deserve it, then there's a possibility you may want to check into what was going on in your family. You feel depressed versus angry. Depression is better than feeling angry. Anxious is better than feeling angry in a narcissistic home. Because you better not be angry, because the narcissist or narcissistic parent can eat you up alive. So it's better to just have the anger go inward and you just be depressed. That's just better for us to choose that. Another possible trait or a sign that you may want to take a look at it, you experience hypervigilance, but you're not sure why. You're always on guard. You're always scanning. You're always worrying. You're always thinking, what do they think? You're always thinking, what should I say? You feel insecure in that way, and you're just hypervigilant. Well, where did we learn to be hypervigilant? and why? Well, in a narcissistic home, that is normal. You better be hypervigilant because that's how you survive. Additionally, number 10, you may feel successful, but not happy. And again, someone who grew up with a narcissistic parent, they may have pushed them into success, educationally, career-wise. In other words, the importance of them doing special things so that the narcissistic parent could shine. But the child who fulfills those things can't find happiness. They can be, and I don't know how many people I've talked to are successful or wealthy, and they're just not happy because that was what they were supposed to do. And they're just not happy with their lot in life at this point. Number 11, authority figures are troublesome for you. You may feel like you have to perform for them. If we grew up with a troublesome parent, particularly a narcissistic parent, then we tend to have trouble with authority figures because we see them like we might see our parent. Unpredictable, kind of hypercritical, not supportive, shaming, guilt-tripping. We see them as all capable of doing that, and so we have this difficulty with authority figures. We don't have a sense that I'm okay, you're okay. The old adage from back in the 70s and 80s with TA, transactional analysis. I'm okay, you're okay, which means I'm equal to you, you're equal to me. But you may be in an authority position, and that I certainly respect, but you're still a human and I'm still a human. That's still the same. But with authority figures, we'll feel more triggered, and they may be troublesome for us. And we always feel very uncomfortable with them. And again, in a narcissistic parent home, that's often what gets created. Number 12, you may feel like you don't know how to handle gaslighting or distortion. Gaslighting triggers self-doubt, and distortion can trigger self-doubt. And it may even stop you in your tracks when someone is gaslighting you. I don't know how many people, including myself, because I often include myself in much of what I talk about, and because I've experienced all of that and gone through it. And that if someone is gaslighting me, I remember times in which it would just be like it would baffle me, and I just wouldn't know what to do. It's like, okay, well, they're not saying what I know to be true or thought was true, and then I'm just confused now, and I don't know what to believe. And it triggers this self-doubt. Well, maybe I didn't have it quite right. And why would that person say that didn't happen when I thought it did? And so it creates stopping us in our tracks. We don't know what to do with gaslighting. We don't know, because we don't have enough self-differentiation, which I talk a lot about in the online program that's listed below. I hope you'll check that out. That self-differentiation in which we can respond with, well, that's fine if that's your version of what you think happened, but I know for me, this is what happened. We may disagree, but this is what happened, in my opinion. And if you've grown up in a dysfunctional home with, say, a narcissistic parent, you'll have trouble with gaslighting, triggering you, and distortion triggering you. Somebody coming and saying, well, yeah, they said all that, but they didn't say what this part you said. And then we're going, but I heard what they said. And then we start into the self-doubt and insecurity. This video is not meant to diagnose your parent or to replace professional help or guidance for you. I hope you'll get some help. If you've identified with a number of these traits, I hope you will work with someone and check out the dynamics of a narcissistic parent. Also below, there's some training and an online program you can sign up for that I think would be worth your while. It's only taken me 45 years to put it together. And I truly want to thank you for joining me today. Have a great day and be wise.